a lot of people do wrong is when they're doing their feasibility, they're just relying on the comparative market analysis. Going on to realestate.com, you're looking at comparable sales. Now with land, you actually have a lot more layers that you can go to get a much more accurate number.
What are your thoughts? You've been in this land game for over 10 years now, in the South East Queensland corridor. What is driving these prices?
So the driver is effectively its underlying demand. You see a lot of interstate migration net to Queensland.
Morgan Lewis is the co-founder and director of BE Property, specialising in marketing land subdivisions across South East Queensland and helping developers implement sales strategies that maximise project profitability.
With a background in mechanical and aerospace engineering, he has coordinated over $250 million in property sales throughout his career.
As a small developer, one thing that you have as an advantage over the larger guys is you have that adaptability. You can learn quickly, you can move, you can jump on opportunities as and when they come up.
Is there a better bang for buck agent to go after in your eyes?
It is a tough one. When you are calling them, try and offer some kind of value to them. I know it might sound difficult. It doesn't just look like you're calling them up and it's all take.
If someone listening to this wants to become a developer in the next 1, 2, 3 years, what should they start doing tomorrow morning?
Okay, I think
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Unemployable podcast. Today we're going to be talking about property, and specifically there's a word or a couple words that a lot of people don't understand, and it's called project marketing. And what that is usually when people think of project marketing, they think of apartment sales. You walk off the street, you go into a beautiful display, you're approached by a salesperson, and they're going to sell you a unit in an apartment building. And that's usually what people think of project marketing. Now, today we have someone very special on the panel, and they're a little bit different. So what they do is they do sales and project marketing, but they're a lot more niched into land and townhouse developments. They work closely with developers, helping them find land, and then on the back end, also helping them sell the land. And not just sell the land to, mom and dads, but they also help sell to builders as well. And specifically, they really concentrate on the feasibilities on what they do. So if you're a new land developer looking to get into land or actually doing land developments already, these guys are who you want to be using, number one. And number two, we have Morgan Lewis here from B Property. How are you?
thank you, Eric. Pleasure to be here.
Good. Carson and Shannon have been telling me a lot about you off camera. We've been you've been on the boat cruise with us and hanging out, and I used to have a project marketing company, so I know all about that space. And you guys are very, very unique in what you guys actually do, because you guys dig right into the feasibilities. Like off camera, we're talking about land deals and stuff like that, but you actually take it to another level. Whereas most project marketing companies, you'll give them your land or your project, your apartment site or your townhouse site, and they'll do, beautiful brochures and do a sales campaign, but you actually work a lot on the feasibility side. So explain to us a little bit more on what B Property does for those that don't know exactly what you do.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Eric. So our specialty is marketing and sales of land projects and more recently townhouse projects. We've done this since 2015. And we've taken a particular focus on 1 to 50 dwelling size projects. And that's been all through South East Queensland. So we service Gold Coast, all the way out to the Lockyer Valley and even up to Bundaberg. Now, one thing the listeners need to understand with land in particular is that, which might be different to their normal experience with selling, which might be selling a house, is land is often sold a long time before it registers. So what that means is when you go through the subdivision process, you can actually sell land as soon as you have the DA. So as soon as you have your approval for your subdivision, that's the time that you can start selling your blocks of land. And you do that through an off-the-plan contract using disclosure statements. Now what that means is that the sales, if you're purely looking at sales that are registered settled sales, these may have happened 12 months ago, 6 months, 12 months. sometimes even longer. And in the market that we've seen in South East Queensland, in pretty much since COVID, that can make a huge difference in the number that you're putting in your bottom line when you're doing your feasibility. If you're doing multiple lots as well, that number is going to have a multiplying effect. So the first thing a lot of people do wrong is when they're doing their feasibility, they're just relying on the comparative market analysis technique that they've seen from trying to value their own house, maybe when they're looking at selling their own house or when they're looking at buying their own house. Going on to realestate.com, they're looking at comparable sales and try and make an estimate that way. Now with land, you actually have a lot more layers that you can go to get a much more accurate number. So the first thing that you need to be looking at doing is considering a region. So land, people that are buying land and people that are interested in land, they'll look across a region more so than a particular suburb. So you should be considering what are some neighboring suburbs or what's the region in general doing from a price point perspective. And you can look at the comparable sales, and then you need to look at the comparable listings. And when you're looking at comparable listings, you should also be looking at what is the volume of listings that are available, and are these under contract, or are they unconditional sales? Sometimes that can be difficult to do if you don't have the connections in the industry, because a lot of sales for land are done, they're not done via the traditional put on realestate.com, call the agent and sell to direct to the buyer. There's a lot of intermediaries, as we call them, or referral partners. So think builders, marketing groups, buyers agents, building brokers, various people like this. They have an interest in land, but they're not going to be the person that's signing on that contract. So the next thing you need to do as well is you need to look at and it sounds counterintuitive, but you can actually look at the sales of development sites in the area. Because what you can do is you can establish a baseline for potentially what the future stock is going to look like in that area and what price those blocks might need to be for that developer to be profitable. A good example is a sale recently, I believe it was Ausbuild in Chambers Flat, which is in South East Queensland and Logan. And for the price that they were paying, can't remember off the top of my head. Do you remember that price?
Yeah, it was a big one.
About 280 a lot, something like that.
Yeah.
This is raw land.
Raw land. Yeah. So if you look at that sale, that says to you or says to me, they need to be mid fives, maybe 600,000 to be making a profit on that particular project, which is 10, 15% at least above what the current values are. So when you start to look at all these things, and the last thing you should look at as well is existing homes, especially as you're getting into more infill areas closer to the city. So infill are areas where you're not seeing these larger parcels of land. Traditionally, you're seeing maybe 1 to 2 subdivisions or 1 to 5. And the reason you're looking at this is because you need to consider what is the buyer's next best alternative. So when you're valuing something, what you're doing is you're getting the head of the buyer or potential different buyers that you might have for the product that you're going to put to the market at the end, and understanding how they might see value in that product. So if you're looking at existing home sales, then you can start to work backwards. So let's say you're looking at an area where there's no new land sales, but there's a new house sale, and that house sold for, say that house sold for 1.5 million. And you can make some estimates as to what the cost of that house might be. Let's say the house cost $700,000 to build. Then you can see that the land price, the residual land value is about $800,000. Now, normally there would be some uplift in the building process, especially as you're closer to the city. So that might then start to set a ceiling price for your evaluation of where the land is currently sitting in the market. So across all those different techniques, now you've got a way where you can come up with a much more accurate estimate of whatever you're putting to the market in your particular feasibility. And we've seen some areas in South East Queensland have moved as much as 30 or 35% in the past 12 months. So Caboolture is a good example. 400 square metre block of land there. It's now going to be in the low fives. 12 months ago, that was probably 390, 410, somewhere around there.
How are these prices increasing so quickly? I guess this is the frustration that a lot of people have, right? Going, I mean, how can it be 390 to 550 in 12 months time? Is it greedy developers? Well, what are your thoughts? You've been in this land game for over 10 years now, and you specifically only do land and now getting into townhouses. So someone like you knows this market really well, specifically in the Southeast Queensland corridor. What is driving these prices?
So the driver is effectively its underlying demand from owner occupiers and demand from investors. Um, you can see if you look at migration data, and I use this as a good leading indicator. So the migration data of people coming to Queensland, you see a lot of interstate migration net to Queensland. So while that continues, from the demand side of things, you have this huge amount of people that are looking for a product. And the majority of that interest is in the sub 1.5 or even sub 1 million price bracket. So when I say 30% or 35%, yes, you may have seen that for a 400 block in Caboolture, or say even a smaller block might have seen higher growth. But then if you come somewhere closer to the city, it's probably only 10, maybe 15% growth in that same period. So the growth is driven by the overall price point. So the land plus whatever you're putting on the land, whether you're putting townhouses on there, whether you're putting a house. So you need to think of if it's the land plus whatever I'm putting on there. Let's say I'm putting a single story house. If that's priced at 800, doesn't matter if the block's a 500 square meter block or if it's a 300 square meter block, I can still get a 4-bed, 2-bath low set on there. So therefore, that's going to drive the values of those smaller blocks and cheaper price points a lot quicker than the larger blocks.
Makes sense. With B property, what sets you guys, I guess, tell us a little bit more about what sets you guys apart from a traditional project marketing company, right? Because a lot of people, I mean, project marketing is a very dirty word in some circles, right? For every, good project marketing company, there's other ones that aren't so good, and everybody knows somebody that's trying to sell off the plan and stuff. And I was in the industry, and I really enjoyed owning a business that we did project marketing. I kind of miss it from time to time, to be honest with you, and I still have some affiliations within that industry. But you guys are different, and I want you to communicate that to the listeners here, because there's going to be people listening from all walks of life. There's going to be people listening that know nothing about property, that want to know about property. There's going to be people that are putting their first offers to seasoned developers like, Carson and Shannon, that are looking at using your services moving forward. So I want to give you a chance so the people listening can get a real understanding of who Morgan Lewis is, first off, and what B Property actually does, and what you guys can help with.
Well, I'll give you a bit of context, take you sort of back to the start of my journey in property and talk through some of the things that I've experienced over the years and how that's taken us to where we are today and ultimately the value offering that we have for our clients. So I graduated from university in 2013, actually very well academically, and was working in the city as an engineer. But I always had an interest in property, had an interest in investment. Interested in
Sorry, doing. I think Shannon just seen an off the market land deal that Morgan sent him.
Oh,
Ah,
All good, man.
Yeah.
This is why we're
I
lost.
was just choking up. It happens every now and then.
That's all right. Just get your mouth away from that mic, man.
Yeah.
So we were interested in investment, and I was starting a property. I had some friends as well one of them was working in a house and land marketing company that's Mirren, ultimately became my business partner. Another friend that was very software based, and we started in property through designing and building an app. And this was 2013, 2014. So that was the flavor of the time. Everyone wanted to build an app. And we were using our strategy, Gavin's ability to build effectively, we were trying to reverse the process of finding a site. So we were taking a lot of the data available from councils about town planning and creating a process where you could say, well, I'm looking for a splitter deal, so a deal where you have 2 lots already on a block, or I'm looking for a subdivision and in a particular suburb or a particular price point, and that would then generate a list of addresses, which you could then effectively go ahead and try and prospect and ultimately secure those purchases. That was a very good networking tool. And the big thing that I realized, because I was made redundant from my work, which was a blessing. So effectively, I took that jump into becoming full-time in property, which I imagine there's a lot of people listening that would love to do that. What I realized early was that cash flow is a problem. So it's all well and great to go and do developments, but they require cash and they're very lumpy, and you might not know how long time frame it's going to take. So leveraged the experience of Mirren, and we started an aggregation business. So aggregation is effectively a person that would take a bunch of stock, so take a bunch of land from all different states. Then they're going to go and put a house and land package on all of those blocks, and then they're going to put that to a marketing group. A marketing group then presents that to a purchaser. So the function of the aggregator effectively is just to make life easy for the marketing group. They might have a client that has a particular criteria, price point, location, etc., and then they've put that together. And that was my first kind of step into this wholesale, off the plan marketing world. From aggregation, we moved into retail selling of build contracts. So we were working with a builder, and they were trying to do most of their sales out of display homes at the time. But we were doing house and land packages where we would find some land, we'd put a house package on that. We would do all the work up front for the buyer. So we'd figure out what can you build on there, what are the costs going to be. So it was a full turnkey offering. And these were in places close to Brisbane where ultimately we were trying to offer a viable alternative to a mum and dad buyer as opposed to buying an existing house, where they could get all the answers and all very accurate estimates up front and make a decision and give them comfort to go ahead with building. And that was very successful. And from there, we had a few instances where, in that scenario, all our commissions were paid from builders. And we had instances where we lost several hundreds of thousands in forward commission because, for whatever reason, different builders go broke.
Oh, you too, Eric?
From time to time. But the big value that we realized out of this was that we were doing probably 80 or 90% of the work to sell the land. And often we were dealing through a land agent who didn't really know much about selling land. They could tell us where it was and how big it was and maybe a price, but that was the extent of it. And then, we have to do all the homework and ultimately generate a buyer out of thin air for that particular agent. And they were making all the commission on the land. So we thought, well, we know what the process is to sell to an owner-occupier. We know what the process is to aggregate. We know what the process is to sell through builders. We know how they want the commission, how they want the information delivered. And we thought, well, we could be much more effective as being a specialist land agency that represents developers. And we just started in the small subdivision space. Started with 2 lots, 4 lots.
Now, would you find those parcels of land for people, or would you package them up?
We wouldn't find the blocks of land, as in the raw development sites. That is generally that's the job of the developer to do that. And we can sort of talk more to that later.
Yep.
But a lot of the developers were people that we'd actually sold for through some of these agents in the past, and we started with that, and really went from strength to strength. They grew as we grew, so it was all working very well as a team. And in the past 5 years now, we've done over 250 million in land sales, and we've done that in over 100 different locations. So that's probably one of the big differences to us as a project marketing company with that land specialization, is that we have the coverage all over Brisbane, all over South East Queensland, all the way up to Bundaberg. But we're doing small projects and we're doing bigger projects. We've got projects 50 lots, 55 lots in Boondall. It's about a $38 million project. We're doing townhouse projects now at that sort of level. So as a developer that's trying to find sites, you have one person that you can call that can give you very accurate, very relevant market data for effectively all of South East Queensland. And if we don't know the price ourselves, we'll know who it was that sold it. So we'll be able to get all that information for you.
I guess that's where I wanted to bring you guys on board, and we've kind of, formed that relationship mainly for our coaching clients to start off with, because I was like, it's such a integral part of, upfront trying to find out what the value of sites are, and your background of actually understanding and having those connections, because like what you alluded to before, you might have a lot of our coaching clients come to us and say, hey, there's no real sales data here. Like, how do I work out, what to put in my feasibility for this block? Is it 450? Is it 500? The neighbouring properties? And I think, we've had conversations where you've rung me up and said, hey, I know you're looking in this area. The number now is, 450 a block, not 410. I just want to let you know. So you're putting it in your feasibility because we've sold X amount to builders. It's not on RP data, it's price finder. You can't see those transactions because, like you said, the majority of them happen pre-sale contracts. So I think the real value for you putting on the developer hat is getting a lot of that information up front, and then obviously you're putting a bit of value, equity, sweat equity up front to then obviously hopefully secure the sales at the back end. But that's I guess with developers, no matter whether it's the sales or your town planners, is having those key relationships, and like someone like yourself is a integral part of that, because me and Shannon, when we started out, was like, okay, you go to the mum dad real estate agent that sold the last couple of blocks there. We didn't even know there was really a specialist land world out there, and that's kind of why we wanted to bring you in and just let our listeners know that, hey, there is this whole different world, like the whole spruikers and marketeering, and I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest, and that there's clips from the builders getting put out here and bits and pieces. So so a lot of that value up front, like you're mentioning, you're giving to your clients to, I guess, be one step ahead of the mum dad agent that might just be ringing the local real estate agent, I suppose. Is that where you see a lot of your value as well? Yeah.
Well, I think it's not just that. It's also when you're designing your subdivision as well, you can often have a number of different configurations available to you. For instance, a good example, let's say you have a block of land and it's got 22 meters frontage. You can cut that into two blocks that are 11 meters wide, or you can cut that into a block that's 10 meters and one that's 12 meters, like assuming your other town plan requirements check out. And the 10 and 12 is going to be the much better option, because the standard project builders work on 10, 12, 12 and a half, 14 sort of standard lot sizes. So there's going to be a lot more options for the buyer at the end. And you're also going to have two different lot sizes, so you're going to hit two different price points. So it's like a very simple example, but there is a number of different constraints which you might have in your site, which is going to have a big impact on the value of the land at the end. So you need to understand all of that at the start as well. So for instance, if there's slope on the site, is there easements? And easements have a different impact. So if it's a driveway easement, well, effectively you just need to take that area off what you're offering to the market. If it's a stormwater easement, but it's in the setbacks anyway, it's not really going to have much of an impact. Where are the services? Different things like that. Is it on a road where you can have easy access to the site, or is it on a road where, for instance, school zones? A lot of the project builders don't build in school zones, so that's going to have an impact, because when it comes to selling, again, these are all the objections that you're going to face from different potential buyers. So yes, I think there's a lot that goes into it at the start, trying to design something from a sales perspective, and we can't always get everything we want, because you've got ecological, you've got all your other requirements for engineers and that. But it's about, really, when you find a site, there's three people you should be calling. You should be calling your town planner. What can I do? Your civil engineer or your civil contractor. What's it going to cost me? And us, or a sales advisor that has the product knowledge and the area knowledge to give you like accurate pricing, that's your starting point. That's your starting point for your 5-minute Feaso.
And it's pretty clear just listening to your journey on how real estate started for you, that you've already been around the full circle with developing. So you started by wanting to find sites and then finding the cash flow problems, working with aggregators, that you're not your typical agent that just goes out and sells mum and dad properties, to be able to go and do that from the front end, which is really good. How do people filter through, like in other areas, if they're looking for yourself over in WA or down in Victoria? What questions would a developer or small-time developer be asking their agents to get through that? Because I don't mean in an offensive way, but every agent will say they can do it,
Yeah.
just like every broker will say they can finance a construction project. But there's skills to the trade. So
Yeah.
what would they be asking to sort of weed out those questions to find yourself somewhere?
That's a great question, Shannon. Well, I think the first thing that I would be doing is when they give you the appraisal, ask for evidence behind that. So if it's a number that's higher than you're expecting, which often is the case in South East Queensland, what evidence do you have to back that up? Or if you have some particular views, let them give you their opinion first. Then I think it is very important, especially with the direction things are going, where I think a big opportunity probably around the country is that 1 million, up to 1.5 million space. We're going to start to see smaller and smaller lots or micro lots. These sorts of lots more and more become integrated with what you can put on them, i.e., is it a terrace house? Is it a townhouse? Is it can you get a low set or can you get a high set? So I think it's important for developers to have at least a good base level understanding of building, what's involved with building, what are some of the key constraints that are going to be involved. And outside of that, I would ask for what their experience is in the area selling land in particular. And when you're coming to interview agents, a good sales campaign really needs to achieve, in my opinion, you're trying to achieve 4 things. So scarcity, i.e., if you've got 1 block, you want to have at least 2 buyers looking at it. If you've got 10 blocks, you can have more than 10 buyers. If you're doing 50 blocks, well, okay, you can introduce scarcity because maybe you start doing staging your releases. Maybe you have different size lots. So there needs to be a strategy around scarcity. There needs to be a strategy around urgency. Is there a deadline? How are you creating some urgency in the process to get buyers to make a decision? Social proof is another big one. So being able to demonstrate that either there's other people looking at the block or or there's already purchases in the estate. So one way you might do social proof, for instance, if we're selling a block closer to the city where it's most likely going to be a retail type scenario, talking to local buyers, we do what's called, it's not an open for inspection because it's nothing really to see, but it's a walk on site. And we'll have that at a particular time. And our goal is to have multiple people there. And really that just functions so other people can see, okay, well, I'm not the only one looking at this block. So you need to have a strategy around social proof. And then probably the 4th thing is exclusivity. Is there a way that you can make the buyer feel like this is something they can only get through the particular person they're talking to, which might not be you. That might be talking to a marketing group that's working for a builder that's packaged up the land. So you can have tremendous results where it doesn't even go to realestate.com. It goes through off-market or pre-portal processes as we would call it, pre-portal. So that ultimately you're giving the person that's trying to sell the block through a package the ability to present exclusivity to that particular buyer.
But by doing that, does the client or developer go, well, how do you know you're getting me the best price if you're taking it to, pre-portal, as you call it, system? Because a lot of people, and when I go to buy stuff off market, they're like, well, how do I know what you're offering me is the best? So, but I've also seen when people buy stuff off market actually pay way too much as well. So do you find some of these marketing groups will actually pay top dollar, and that's a really good price based on your kind of experience to actually do those deals ahead of time? Like, do you feel like you're still extracting the best price by doing those off-market deals, I suppose?
Yeah, so the advantage of the off-market generally is early on in your development journey for a particular project, you often won't really have anything for buyers to see. You may have started civil works on site, but what we find is for realestate.com, a lot of people want to come walk the site, see what's going on, touch and feel, have this feeling that it's quite close to registration, meaning that they can purchase and start their building journey. So if you have a number of lots to sell and you're waiting until the end of your project, well, you do run the risk that there could be another COVID, there could be a bunch of interest rate rises. So you could end up getting stuck with all this residual stock that you can't move at the end of your project. So you want to, we work on a sales rate at the moment, where we're incrementally increasing price so that we're achieving a particular sales rate. If it sells too quickly, we'll hold some back, we'll increase the price. If it's sort of sitting there, we'll just let it ride out over a couple of months. And at the moment, the market's sort of meeting that expectation. So when it's off market and it's sold through a marketing group, they've generally spent a lot of time and effort to already qualify that particular buyer. So they might have done, say, a 10 steps to wealth if it's an investor, or they'd have some particular sales process where that buyer's not actually seeing any stock until they're qualified, finance approved, ready to purchase. And they're not presenting a block of land and a price, they're presenting a package. So they're reframing that conversation. So that's ultimately how at those early stages, you'll end up with unconditional sales through qualified purchases, as opposed to your sort of realestate.com campaign.
The question, I have, and I've got, all three of you guys at the table here, Shannon and Carson have been basically selling all their stock themselves because Carson is tight as the fishes. And you've got you on the other hand, right, that are on at the table going, hey, you need to be using people like me. So what I'd love to know from both of you guys, Shannon and Carson's side, and from your side, Morgan, is why should developers, especially in a market, right, like when a market is on a, going down as an example, or it's tough to sell, obviously you're going to be throwing a lot more baits out there to try and get as many sales as possible. But in a pretty hot market like South East Queensland, what are some of the benefits for someone like Shannon and Carson to go, you know what, all right, let's give this guy a crack and let's give him, some stock to sell? What are some benefits of going to someone like you? Because obviously it's up front, it's definitely not priced from a person's perspective, because they're going, I'm selling it myself because I'm not paying the X% commission. But I want to know your argument to that.
Yeah, perfect. Great question, Eric. Well, the first thing I'd say, if I was the developer, the first question I would ask myself, and it sounds a bit silly, but it would be, do I have time to sell my own stock? And if you're looking at creating a development business, so let's start talking about a business now, not just deal by deal. The first thing you need to do is you need to achieve deal flow. So to achieve deal flow, when do you make your money? When you buy. Make your money when you buy, right? Not when you sell. You need to spend your time, firstly, on acquisitions. I would say, from my experience, the people that I've seen take that jump and grow very successful development businesses in a short period of time, they would be putting in at least 5 genuine offers per week. So if you're not putting in 5 genuine offers per week, you don't have time to sell your own stock. That's the first barrier. Okay. Second barrier would be, if you are putting in 5 offers per week, have you got your funding sorted so that you can move quickly when opportunities come up? Because that is also very crucial, especially in the South East Queensland market. It's being able to move move quickly on opportunities, take calculated risks. So that might mean, have I got a serviceability partner, or do I have finance pre-approval? If I need to raise 500,000, can I do that quickly? So to raise 500,000 as a rule of thumb, you probably need to have about 5 people you can call that could put that money in, because you might have a 1 in 5 hit rate. So if you've got deal flow and if you've got your funding sorted, then probably the third thing I would ask is, do I have the systems and the processes to run an effective sales campaign? So we break down a sales campaign into what we can control. You can't control price. That's a big myth. People think you can control price. You can control the asking price, but you can't control whether someone's going to pay that. If someone's going to pay more, if someone's going to pay less, if there's going to be anyone that's going to even buy, right? So the things that you can control is you can control marketing. So marketing is, if you imagine you've got a funnel, you've got a bucket, and you've got, how many hoses do you have that you can fill that bucket up with? So how many ways do you have to generate leads? Then the next thing would be presentation. So how are you branding that estate? How professional is your digital and print media and all these sorts of things? And then the last thing is communication. So how are you communicating with your buyers? What is your speed of response? So we have invested over $100,000 in the past couple of years to build systems and the personnel where someone will get a response 24/7. They'll get a text message. If they provide the phone number, they'll get an email. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. So that gives them the information instantly to start assessing the opportunity. And then we have someone that is solely devoted to calling back buyers, nurturing those buyers, trying to convert them into someone that's qualified, that's looking to make an offer. On top of that, you've got myself and my business partner, Mirren, another salesperson, Rafa. So Mirren, he has an Indian background. Rafa has a Chinese background. Between the three of us, we pretty much cover most of the ethnicities of buyers in this area. So we've got the ability to communicate effectively. We've got the knowledge around building to sort of preempt the questions that people are going to have, whether it's a builder, what sort of questions, have you got disclosure plans? What's the registration? Are there any covenants? All these sorts of things. If it's a buyer, what are the setbacks? Other questions they might have around, I've never built before. So then, are you doing a single story, double story? What type of house are you looking to build? All these sorts of things. And the culmination of those three things is what's going to lead to the price. Because ultimately, you're trying to pop out a bunch of qualified buyers that are ready to go, and that's going to introduce that scarcity, that competitive tension that we spoke about earlier to design an effective sales campaign. So if you've got all of those three things in place as a developer, you've got deal flow, you've got funding, and you've got systems and processes to run an effective campaign, okay, well, maybe you might think about selling yourself. But I would guess that probably if you do, you could be doing more. You could be doing more sites. You could be looking at other ways to increase your development business, increase the cash flow. Could you look at going into commercial? Could you look at becoming a builder developer? So all these sorts of things.
I mean, we all fall into that same headspace, right? Like I know, Carson and Shannon, the only reason why they would be selling their own stuff is because there's more margin on it. I mean, they're doing it themselves, so they don't have to pay out. Obviously, they don't have, this massive development company where they have, 20 people in an office doing this and that and having all the systems and all the processes and the marketing and everything perfect. But at the end of the day, they're saving what they would think up front is a lot of money. But we always talk about this off camera and going, the acquisition piece is where you actually make your money, right? So where are you better off spending your time? Now I want to give it to Shannon and Carson, because this is very important, guys, because everyone is going to be in the same headspace at some point. When you're doing your feasibility and you're working it out, all right, 20 blocks, average, $500,000 a block, that's, $10 million times X%. And then you go, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why don't we just do that? Or why don't we just hire someone in-house to do that? So I want to know a little bit of your guys' journey, guys, and where you're at, because I know you're starting to look at, using people like Morgan and Be Property and whatnot.
I think Morgan's done that spiel a few times because are we doing 5 offers a week?
I'm actually glad you're making this question now.
You're a shit developer.
Bloody hell.
I'm glad you said that number because I've been saying that to our coaching clients. I'm like, you guys need to be making 1 or 2 offers a week, and they're just like 1 or 2 offers a week. I'm like, I don't even care. Like if they're great offers, I want to get into the habit of that, using that muscle, because like me and Shannon, 50% of the projects we got on our board are ones that have come back 6, 12 months later, just because we've got a hat in the ring and just because it was overpriced. And sometimes it's like we've offered literally half the price of the listing or 30% less or different terms. But if you don't put your hat in the ring, if you're not making that volume of offers, then the deals aren't going to come back to you. But I think you're right. Like that's something, it's opportunity costs. We talk about all the time, even in the civil game. Like we're like, okay, we're saving this money for Shannon with his expertise in the civil construction. But if his head wasn't there and we're out there assessing more sites, and as we're growing, you can't have his head in the dirt when we got 5 projects under construction. It's okay when you got 1. So it's a space that we're looking at, and I'm saying, Shannon, I want you in the office more, and then I'm a tight ass by nature, so my very first block I've always tried to sell it. Like I've actually copied the print from the previous agent and copied and pasted, rang up, said, what are you doing? Like just literally my copy word for word. But so I think and what I think the biggest thing is most people can't get their emotion out of their own project. They either think it's going to be the most fandangle townhouse or best piece of dirt ever, or they just can't do the negotiation piece. Like there's an art in that. And I think I'm very unemotional, so I think we do it okay, but we don't know what we're leaving on the table as well. And it's still something that moving forward, we're not going to be able to do. So yeah, I think it's a good point that you make. I think 95% of people probably shouldn't. I know some developers that have got some really good in-house teams in place and systems, like you say, that work okay. But for the majority of people, like you give up one deal and you lose $1, $2, $10 million. It's gonna come back and bite you.
I think,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess the other thing that a lot of people forget about agents is that they're paid on commission. So what does that actually mean? It means that you're paid on a result. Now imagine if you go to the town planner and say, hey, Mr. Town Planner, I'll pay you 3 times your fee, but only if you can get me an approved DA that has, more lots than I could under a code assessment. I think you choose that every day of the week, right? So with an agent, effectively you decide whether you're going to sign the contract or not. If you're not happy with what they're doing, you can just sack them, and then you can sell it yourself. If the price isn't, if they haven't shown you and demonstrated to you that the price you're getting is the best price in the market, then it's probably not a good choice of agent anyway.
And I think the counter argument to that as well is sometimes agents are too transactional in the sense that they don't give a rip about getting that extra 5, 10, 15, 20 grand. So like I really judge my agents on, like I had one particular agent one day, I said, look, actually, because I don't like to let people know if it's just a one block or house, what my end number necessarily is, and to the final thing, I said, look, I'll accept whatever it was, 1.3. And he came back and got me 1.33. And I didn't ask for 1.33, but he still went into bat for me. I was like, for me, that's what a good agent is. Whereas for most agents, they're looking at their commission at 1.3. They don't care about the extra 30 grand because it's not like that. Their 2 or 3% or whatever it is of that little 30 grand is not much. So to your point, I think having that strategy of moving the prices up, because this is the other thing me and Shannon got caught on, or selling our own stuff. It's all fun and games at the moment when the market's booming, but that's not normal. It's not always going to be like that, because we've had other times talk about your point before about the interest rates going up, when we had an estate and there was comparable sales at 750,000. So we list our estate, I think in the high 6s and some 7s, and then the market started coming back, and we got one sale over the line, and then it just sat there, So we were better off pulling it back a bit and then putting the prices up, because now you had this one sale, and if you discount the price, and this guy's sitting there going, hang on, well, I've just, got an unconditional off the plan contract, and here I see you marketing 20, 30 grand discount off back here. It just creates all sorts of problems for your estate. So I think that strategy piece is something that early developers like us didn't really fully appreciate, I suppose. So
Yeah, you don't fully appreciate that until you're stuck in an inflation interest rate like when it rises. I think we went through 8 interest rate rises, and we're out on the project every day trying to sell property, and Carson's starting to question whether he's a good agent or not, 'cause he only got one or two away, and there was a builder who actually got a few others away, but we just couldn't control the market at that point. We were stuck in it. So
well, the other thing I wanted to ask you as well is about the builders, because before we started talking a bit, we started talking to some builders directly, and to your point about, hey, the things I didn't really think of was, make sure the frontage is this and your size of your block is that. But I also feel like as soon as I start getting that information from the builder, now I feel obliged to do that deal with that builder. They kind of got you by the short and curlies a little bit. Like, hang on, I gave you all this information. Whereas you can be like, hey, this is what the builders want. And then you can still get that competitive, tension at the end of the, when you're ready to market them, whether that's, after the DA or when you're a bit further into the construction piece, and you don't feel like you have to do a deal with, builder A because they've given you all this information up front. So I guess that's another piece to consider if you're just going to do a deal with one builder as opposed to putting 3 of them in a room. No.
I mean, it's that whole, like you mentioned earlier, right? That scarcity, urgency, social proof, it's exclusivity. And it's the same thing, I'm assuming, that you would do with your builders, right? Obviously, you have a database that you built over a long period of time. And this is what the people don't see. They think just because you're going to go and put on realestate.com.au that you're going to have every single builder in South East Queensland, specifically on this topic, because that's where you guys are based, going to be ringing them. But that's not the case. They're not all looking at the exact same time in the exact same area. Whereas you obviously will have a database and going, hey guys, guess what I got coming in 6 months? I've got 50 lots in Mudgerba as an example, which is rare as hen's teeth, and they're all going to be fighting over it because you're just obviously creating that scarcity, creating that urgency. I know a lot of your builder clients aren't going to want to listen to this, but that's the reality, right? Like, it's at the end of the day, when you're working for the seller, when you're on that side of the fence, right? So that's very important. I want to talk a little bit about like numbers and feasibility and risk, because this is where the real scoreboard is, right? And a lot of agents understand pricing, and there's other agents that don't understand it as well. And this is where a developer, right, can go very, very, very wrong. All it takes is one wrong development to screw up your 5 previous amazing developments by not working out your numbers properly. For some of the newcomers, what are some of the numbers that, in your opinion, that you see that most people are really screwing up at the moment? Is it the land prices because they're not up to speed on how fast they're increasing? Is it the build costs, right? Like civils or the built form costs, marketing? What are you seeing currently in the market, and where people are making most mistakes and things not stacking up?
Yeah, so we can talk about risk for a second. I think when it comes to sales risk, the way you can assess that is you need to, again, like I was talking about at the start, you need to put your mind in the frame of who are the potential buyers at the end. So that project that you mentioned before, Carson, that was acreage? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So probably one of the reasons that you experienced that was because you had only really one type of buyer that was interested in that, in those acreage lots. So most probably owner occupiers. We've been selling acreage recently, and it is a completely different process. A lot of the buyers are subject to sale. There's sometimes multiple parties involved. So that sales risk was already inherent in that project because of what you were delivering. If you are delivering, say, a typical 400 square meter block in a price point that's in Southeast Queensland, let's say under 700,000, then all of a sudden you now have multiple different avenues of selling that block, because you're going to have owner occupier interest. You're going to have interest from investors, and that could be for a regular block, regular just house, single or double story house. That could be for a rooming accommodation. So to your point, Shannon, back when the rates were going up, we still were able to move stock, and what we did was we started thinking about, okay, well, who does it make sense right now to buy? And we worked with Kevin for a bit, and other rooming house accommodation providers. We worked with NDIS, so that's special disability accommodation. So we were moving land even 50,000, 70,000 over what a local sort of owner occupier purchaser would pay, all because it was an area where people wanted to do rooming or people wanted to do SDA. Another thing is duplex or a secondary dwelling. So can you do those sorts of products where you have an additional rental income or the ability to strata at the end? So yeah, the risk is very much about what you're developing. I think luxury real estate probably carries a lot more sales risk than something that because you really only have that one segment of the market that you're targeting. So where I see a lot of people go wrong is they hear the market is hot, there's heaps of buyers, and then they think that applies to, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Doesn't matter if it's a block for 1.5 just for the land, or if it's an acreage lot, if it's a block that's on the side of a cliff. They think that market's hot, there'll be a buyer. That's a big mistake.
Isn't it amazing how much more you can sell a block of land for when the taxpayers are paying for it, eh? As soon as you start saying NDIS, yeah, of course you can sell it for 50 grand more, 70 grand more.
For sure, we haven't been in that market.
Unfortunately, the funding is a lot more difficult now, so we're not moving as many through SDA anymore.
Let us know what you think of that in the comments.
What are some of the costs people are underestimating now? I do built form development, more in that luxury space at the moment. But definitely want to start doing more of what Shannon and Carson are doing, just to reduce risk as well. But costs are out of control in a lot of areas, right? So where are you seeing a lot of people underestimating costs in these feasibilities? Obviously, you're working feasibility, so they're going to have, hey, Morgan, we want to use you yet, and they're going to give you as much work to do as possible, so you can double check their obviously feasibility, the developer's feasibility. Where are you seeing these costs blowing out?
Well, the big cost with subdivision is going to be your civil costs. I think the major blowout is for small projects, for the civil costs on small projects. And the reason is it's very hard to get contractors to work on small projects. I'm sure Shannon would know a lot more about this, but we found if you just want to do, I experienced this myself because we're building a house at the moment and I wanted to do some retaining and fill. And to have a contractor that was going to handle the whole process was about $80,000. And in the end, I just leveraged a few buddies and I got it done for about 25,000. But the reason is that they have to still establish the site, so do the sediment controls and portable toilet. They've got to do all the WHS, all that sort of stuff. Doesn't matter if it's a big site or a small site. And the way all the machine hire works and everything like that, it doesn't work very well for small developments. So I think if you are playing in that sort of sub 5 lot space, that is one area potentially you could spend some time and really save some money if you're prepared to learn a little bit about managing contractors, managing retaining wall builders, and
Managing mates with Havianas and pizza, beer, and a few shovels.
yeah.
No, it's true, because like I hear these guys all the time talking about, like when I first met them, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know they've definitely gone up a lot when they're telling me, roughly the cost to deliver a block of land is X, and then hearing them talking about it now, and it's just increasing and increasing, right? And we're in a unique period of time, because I sit here and doing acreage and some doing luxury stuff, and then you're talking about like if you can get that house under $700,000 or $800,000 on that block of land, but the issue is like finding the block of land. That's the whole thing here, right? Whereas I have friends, locals here on the Gold Coast, that do small scale developments. They'll do duplexes, they'll do triplexes, 4 or 5 packs, some luxury stuff. And they will always use the same agent that sold them the block to sell their end stock, even though if that's not what they sell, because in their mind, they're like, if I give them the stock back, they're going to find me more property and they're going to bring it to me. Now, I know we were talking before and you said maybe we'll discuss it later. And I was asking, do you actually find the sites, right? Because that's the whole key to this, right? Is nothing happens without Shannon and Carson scouring the internet, right? And putting offers and going, yes, this stacks, this doesn't stack, this stacks. And people don't really see that work in behind the scenes. Is this something that you guys will look into maybe in the future in regards to finding some of these types of sites as well? So, because imagine if you can find a site and then you can sell the site, man, that's the ecosystem, full circle.
You just need someone to develop the site with you then.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Yeah. Look, the short answer would be for smaller projects, no. I'm not going to go into acquisitions. A couple of reasons. We sort of dabbled in it a couple of years ago. There's two big problems. Firstly, in effect, we're then becoming competitors with our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And the second issue was, how do we determine who we send it to, right? Of our clients. Yeah. So for smaller projects, probably up to about 5 mil acquisition. We're not going to look at acquisitions. That's really the job of the developer. That is your core job, to be honest, as a developer. We talk about cash flow. If I was trying to make that jump into property now, getting really good at finding sites is the best thing you can do, because at the end of the day, even if you can't make it work and you can't deliver it, you can still sell it to someone else or pick up a site finder's fee. That's going to cover your time while you get into more and more sites. What I have seen working very well for people is two things. So people that are building relationships with agents, that seems to be the best approach, especially in a hot market. And the reason is, you imagine you've got, say, a vendor that's known an agent for 20 years. They've built this trust and this rapport, and then ultimately that if they're ready to sell, they're going to use that agent. That you're not going to be able to build a rapport or trust or a relationship with that vendor anywhere close to what that current agent has. So what you need to do is you need to find a bunch of agents that you can build this relationship with. Sometimes you have agents that are selling, because they have that relationship, they're selling out of area. And if you can be the person that responds very quickly, I'm talking within 24 hours, even if it's something that's not for you, you're providing useful information. Hey, these are some of the things that you might want to look at for this site, or, I've reviewed it and here's some of the considerations. As someone, on occasion, we've sold sites, and I've always found the people that are getting back to me the quickest and giving me useful information that's actually educating me about the whole development process and the site and what are some of the constraints, etc. Naturally, I'm going to gravitate towards those people if I have something else come up. So that would be the first thing that I would suggest that you could do that has been very effective. And we know we've had clients that have picked up a number of sites last year using that strategy. The second thing would be South East Queensland at the moment. There is tremendous opportunity in upcoming planning changes. So, for instance, Logan has a new city plan probably in the next 2 years. Ipswich just released a city plan last year. Brisbane is going through a number of amendments. They've got a major amendment to the low-medium density zone where they're talking about allowing 120 square metre freehold lots. And you've got a brand new South East Queensland regional plan, which is being drafted. So that's the overarching government plan for the area. So as a small developer, one thing that you have as an advantage over the larger guys is you have that adaptability. You can learn quickly, you can move, you can jump on opportunities as and when they come up. The general philosophy and direction that I'm seeing in these amendments is that move towards, I'm going to term them micro lots or gentle density. So we're talking lots under 300 square meters, sort of down to 120 square meters, talking townhouses, sort of increase on the densities allowed around townhouses or decrease in car parking requirements, which is that, like I was talking about, that up to $1.5 million space. So I think if you're in the South East Queensland region, being on top of those changes, having a system in place to move quickly and find sites that might be eligible for those changes. So for Brisbane, a good example, they're talking about increasing a distance. So there's a distance which is 200 meters to a walking distance to a centre zone. If you're inside that, you can do smaller lots than you could otherwise. So they're increasing that to 300 square meters. So you need to be able to jump on those sites very quickly and start making offers, because that overnight, that's going to increase the value of all those sites. And these vendors might not be aware of that, or you might be able to come in and offer 100K over what the previous market value was, and they're going to be very happy to sign. Suddenly you're into a deal. So there's, from an acquisition standpoint, I think there is tremendous opportunity, but that's where you need to focus all of your time as the developer.
It's I mean, we talk about inflation all the time, right? And on the different podcasts and cost of living and stuff. But like, there's literally shrinkflation happening everywhere, right? A Snickers bar is not the same size as a Snickers bar 20 years ago. I swear to God. A Big Mac is not the same size as a Big Mac 5 years ago. And you're just going to be paying more for less. Like, when I start hearing this stuff, it's crazy. Like 300 square meter micro blocks and these types of things. And I know that's happening already in Sydney and Melbourne, and we've been lucky here in Southeast Queensland, but it's definitely heading that way. And I know a lot of people in the comments are going to go bananas because they don't think it's fair. But opportunity wise, I agree with you. That's definitely where it's going. And I mean, even Kevin says it on our podcast, we're just too used to building these big houses on big blocks that majority of people don't really need, right? And a lot of these, micro lots and micro housing, the apartments, the 2-bedroom, 110 square meter, 115 square meter 2-bedroom apartments that they used to build, and those are just decreasing now, to the 90s and 80s. I've got another friend that's looking at building 72 square meter 2-bedrooms, right? But they're not 720 grand. They're still 1.2 million, 1.1 million. And you're just getting, paying more for less.
One thing I heard that was really interesting to me, Carson, remember we went to that UDI event late last year for the Logan planning scheme update. I ended up talking to the councillor, I think he was the head of city planning, or he was up there in city planning for Logan. What he mentioned to me was that council wants infill development. And the reason is that they make money on the infrastructure fees for infill, and they need that to offset the cost of greenfield developments, would actually lose money, because you have to, if the sewer's already there, they don't really have to do anything. If they have to extend a sewer, if they have to extend roads, all that sort of thing, that's infrastructure costs that they realize. So, I'm a believer in swimming with the current. If that's what the council is saying, I'd imagine it's probably a similar philosophy around the place. And these are the sorts of elements where you can probably start to push the envelope a bit, because council's going to be in favour of them.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Because I asked the same guy, I was like, let me do more acreage. He's like, it's not happening. We don't want it. And the state government don't want it. We want smaller lots. So the way I look at it is, effectively, these micro lots is providing the piece of dirt where someone builds their own townhouse, in effect, because townhouses we're used to, but we're not used to, and that's on a small piece of dirt, but we're not used to buying that piece of dirt and then building your own townhouse, in effect, or small lot house, or whatever you want to call it. So whether we like it or not, for affordability, prices aren't coming back down. So that's just the way it needs to be for people, because once again, the cost of unit construction is so much higher. So what is the other solution that's out there? Because, what is it? Something like 95% of small lot subdivisions and detached housing get built once they're approved, as opposed to, say, 35 for the unit complexes, because of the time they get the approvals and the cost of construction. It doesn't stack up anymore if you don't have that at least 20%. And most developers are probably not comfortable doing 20% margins on a high-rise development. It's still a lot of risk, because there's still a lot of variables and things that can change during that process. So a lot of those bigger towers are chasing bigger margins. So it just all of a sudden doesn't stack up. So yeah, it's the way things are going. And like I say, I think the small guys, the one thing that we have in our favour, like you say, is being nimble and doing those jumping on those little things, because we're on the other side at the moment. We're a big group trying to buy our stuff. It's doing our head in, where we're just like having another meeting, and then they go back and talking to their joint venture party, and they come back, and the lawyers. It's just so slow. Whereas we could have made. I was like, really, what me and Shane would have made that decision in 24 hours. Whereas, so that's there's a lot of advantages the big guys have, but that's one way where us little guys, if we find a good little site, then we can tie it up pretty quickly. And yeah, so yeah. What other things do you see with developers that is another skill set that the most successful guys that you and girls that you watch on a day-to-day basis? Obviously the offers and acquisitions space. Is there any other skill set where you see this particular developer does really well and you can see why they win?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I think firstly how they structure their business. So they have a mix of projects. They're going to have the large projects, so they're the real killers. They're the ones that make the big money, but they'll still turn over small projects. Could be a reno, could be building a rooming house, something like that. But that enables a cash flow, and it just keeps the pressure off from that standpoint, so that you can think clearly and you're not getting yourself into any trouble. They have those systems in place, so that ultimately gives them consistency, where they're like, it's funny because I get texts from some of our developers and you can tell it's come off like a general number. It's just like looking for development sites and different things like that. So, they've got processes where they're always staying top of mind on volume with agents that may or may not have development sites. And yeah, they're building a team as well. So once they get to a certain size, they'll then bring on people that are more focused on the smaller projects. So ultimately, the people that they're bringing on, it's like a mentor role, but they're part of the business. They're helping that person get into property. Ultimately, it's building their larger business as well. So yeah, I think they're just approaching it in general like it's a business. The other thing is that they're very good at raising capital. So they have a number of people that they can call that they've built trust with, that if they need to raise a couple $100,000 or even a couple $1 million, these people are ready and willing, and they look after their investors very well.
What would you do if you had a couple $1 million to put into a site right now? What are you going out and trying to acquire? Is it a little townhouse project, little subdivision somewhere? Like, what would be, if you had $2 million to spend, so to speak, whether it's your money or a joint venture party that's setting you on this goal, what would you try and find?
Yeah, interesting question. I think probably what I'd look at is some of the projects we've been involved with. We're now trying to retain the stock. So I would look at some projects that are maybe smaller, but for instance, I can get a duplex lot in there as well. Might be only a couple lot subdivision, but the last one's going to be a duplex lot. I build a duplex on there. I'm going to keep that duplex. So I'm not going to pull. I'll get the cash back out, but the profit will probably stay in there, because if you're positive on South East Queensland, then you want to be trying to hold as much stock as you can. So yeah, I would look at that. And then from a bigger standpoint, I would look at, really drill down into what the state wants versus where the council's at the moment, because I am seeing some opportunities where the state wants to see development, and you might have a discrepancy between, say, in the overlays or different things like that, between the state and the local government. And I think potentially you could put up some risk money trying to option some of those properties. So just with a balance, maybe 20% put up sort of maybe higher risk deals that have a bit of planning risk, but those are the ones that I think ultimately get you a huge uplift. I saw one the other day. Someone had bought this site. In fact, it was in the Western Corridor for just over $4 million, It's now got an approval for over 300 lots, and they're asking over 20 in about 3 years. So, there's opportunities like that out there, but obviously the money that you put in up front is going to be the riskier money. So that's generally, as a developer, that's going to be your capital. Whereas once you've de-risked a project, you want to recycle your capital out and bring in your investors.
I mean, it's like the old saying goes, right? In business and property, the bigger the problems you're solving, the bigger the payday that you're going to get. And we have a major problem in Australia, and that's land. And he or she who solves these problems, right, are going to get paid. And you look at Shannon and Carson at the moment, they're doing a great job of this, and they're getting paid. And this is why Unemployable Property, we teach these types of things and bring people like you on, because in our opinion, there's a massive opportunity for those people that, one, are hungry, and two, want to solve these types of problems and want to learn how to. I've been around property for many, many, many years. And once I started seeing what Shannon and Carson are actually doing in the land and building nothing higher than a curb, after time makes me feel like an idiot on what I've been doing, even though, yes, I've made money and I enjoy it and the rest of it. But then some of the deals are breaking down to me. I'm just going, wow, like it's not even something that I've been exposed to. And the beauty of it is you don't have to start with 50. You can start with 5. Like your guy's sweet spot is 50 and below, really, right? Like you're doing splitters and 5 lots and 10 lots. And, you're just talking off camera about this, new one that you got coming up, 14 lots. And that's not out of hand for a lot of people, for a collaboration of a couple, 2 or 3 minds put together saying, I've got X amount, you've got X amount. Let's kind of do this. And there's that much money out there now. Access to money has been, I think, the easiest now than it's ever been since I've been investing in real estate. There is so much money out there. So in my opinion, for anyone that's listening to this, right, is listen to these podcasts, not just once, not just twice, but listen to them over and over again, because there's so many little nuggets in here. And there's so much potential to change people's lives through property development, through real estate and land subdivision and small scale stuff. Honestly, really, really appreciate you coming here and the relationship that we're all building with you. It's great to see young guys like yourselves out there kind of changing up the game a little bit, and turning it on its head rather than just this traditional style of project marketing, and bringing that tech side to it at the same time, and the automations and that level of service really helps. I want to leave the pod with one question. If someone listening to this wants to become a developer in the next 1, 2, 3 years, right? What should they start doing tomorrow morning?
Okay, I think this is going to sound funny, but I think that they should start calling agents and just getting used to whatever they feel that is going to put them out of their comfort zone. That's what they should focus on first. And you're going to learn so much. You're going to start to build connections so quickly by getting on the phone and talking to people. A lot of people get stuck just in the details, in thinking that they're not ready, that they need to learn more, that, they've got to study up on the town plan or different things like that. That's great. That can come. But taking action, getting on the phone, talking to agents, and getting out to networking events, very important. I think having a mentor as well is really going to accelerate that jump, because it's, again, it sounds cliche, but they've made all the mistakes. So those are really the 2 things: get a mentor and
You
start talking to agents.
you obviously didn't get the text message I sent you, because you were actually supposed to say contact Unemployable Property for coaching. I'll let it go this time, no? But it's enough.
Because you're around a lot of these groups, right? So that I've seen over the journey. So you get an interesting insight into kind of the mistakes and things that people do wrong. With the agents, though, I'm interested, is there a better bang for buck agent to go after in your eyes? Like, as in just the last development site that you saw got sold, ring that agent, or would you go after more the specialized agents that sell more development sites, or people like yourself, or is it just a scattergun approach in your eyes?
Well, I guess, when I said start ringing agents, obviously that the philosophy there is about taking action.
Hmm.
It would be good as well if you have an understanding, sort of maybe what type of project that you might be interested in. You need to match a project to an area.
Mm.
So not all types of projects are going to work in different areas. I know it probably makes things a lot easier if you are kind of living close to where you're trying to do a development. Um, and then once you have a bit of an idea, then you can sort of see projects that have sold. You could go on the council website. You could look at what are some projects that are going through applications right now. So you can see what other people are doing in the area. You can get the addresses. You can find out who sold it, and you can call up that agent, and you can just start having a chat. And from that conversation, you can ask them, do you have any other sites like this? And you can even call the town planner that was doing that project, and you say, hey, can I pay you $200 for a meeting for an hour? And you can just teach me about developing this area and what are some things that I need to look out for.
My question to you, though, is you've already got 5 developers that you've sold to. How do I, as a new person, get in your Rolodex of top 5 people? Is it just being the squeaky wheel? What tips would you give to someone to be one of those people that you ring back knowing you've already got 3 or 4 developers you can pick up and sell it to straight away, potentially? How do I get up the ladder a little bit?
Yeah. Look, it is a tough one, but ultimately, it's the same with us when we're trying to get a developer's business that has someone else. You just have to be consistent and persistent. And when you are calling them, try and offer some kind of value to them. I know it might sound difficult, but just try and figure out a way that you can offer some kind of value to that person. So it doesn't just look like you're calling them up and it's all take, take, take. Like if you can think of some way that you can give some value and you're just continually touching base, eventually you'd be surprised what you can achieve in 12 months of doing that.
I think you touched on a really good point before when you said when you're talking to someone, they come in and they share some of the information about that project. Like it might be an ecological issue, a bushfire issue, whatever it is. Find that builds rapport pretty quickly with an agent when you're also teaching them along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also shows that you kind of know you're not going to be just a tire ticker as well, right? You've actually done a little bit of homework, because I think that's a really good point. So,
Morgan, thanks for coming on. And if anyone wants to get in contact with Morgan and their team over at B Property, please go to www.unemployableproperty.com.au/B Property. That's B for Bob, E Property. And one of their team will get in contact with you and start discussions. But again, Morgan, thanks for coming down to the Gold Coast. Obviously, we know you're based in Brisbane, so it's you're gonna have probably a bit of a tough track home at this time now. But yeah, appreciate your time here, Shannon, Carson. As always, thank you for bringing on these guys. It's just amazing to see, the network that's being created with what we're doing, and we don't, we take everyone's attention very, very seriously. So we just want to bring on quality people that can teach, right? So people can learn, because in my opinion, a good job and a good business is not going to do it anymore. You need to start learning how to make money doing other things.
where else can you go? Just to your point, get really, really good. And I agree with you 100%. The one skill set is finding good sites. Where else can you do of just finding opportunity? And back to your point, there's plenty of capital out there.
Yep.
Where you can actually find one deal to change your whole financial situation. That's exciting to me. That yes, there's all this doom and gloom and housing, this and that, and you can just do the same old grind over and over, and that's your reality, or there is
Yeah.
actually these opportunities. And I think it's pretty incredible. Yes, you can do crypto and, put it on the latest meme comb and hope it goes to the moon. But this is something you can actually take into your own. You've got control over, where it's a real thing. Even if you got no dollars in your back pocket, and actually change your whole financial freedom, I think it's modern day gold mining, and it's exciting to get up and try and find that little nugget somewhere. And it doesn't have to be at the mercy, or the expense rather, of the person selling the site. Like we sent a letter to a lady. We did the deal, and at the end of it, she goes, I was waiting for a developer to send that to me. The agent had appraised it at a certain amount. We paid her overs. It can be a genuine win-win. It's just you're adding the value, and I think it's amazing. I love it.
And not only that, for those of you guys that are watching, this won't make sense if you're not, but it's amazing that the confidence that it builds in you, because you got Carson running around now with an 80s dirty mustache, not like just dropping the mic, going, I don't give a shit because I'm changing my life, and I'm just going around with a dirty mouth. So
It's going to be me.
we'll end it there, guys. But appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Unemployable. If you'd like to watch another episode, just click there.